Where's my PowerPoint? Alright. So, this is How to Cast TF2, Part 2? Part 2. Yay! Of course, by Part 2, this means that if you have not watched Part 1, you should go watch Part 1. Part 1 of How to Cast TF2 covers a lot more of the basics. This is sort of an extension of the original PowerPoint, kind of. It's a lot of things that I didn't put into the original because I just kind of forgot about it in the moment. Obviously, there's so many things to talk about when it comes to casting. I just didn't get to everything. So this is kind of a sequel. Bunch of stuff I didn't get to in the original one that I am now making because I kind of, like, I felt like it, I guess. I don't know. So, yeah. But most of the things that I'm going to talk about today kind of hinge on you having a general grasp of what it means to be a caster. So the very basic principles, which I cover in Part 1. So, if you're stumbling onto this presentation, you haven't seen the first one, go watch Part 1, come back to Part 2, which is what we're on now, because then this will make a lot more sense. So, let's get started. Very first thing I want to talk about is the fact that you should just consider becoming a producer instead. The thing is that we still desperately need European producers. It's actually really important to us. Max Chill's PC is currently on fire. He's trapped inside of a spreadsheet. He's stuck there forever. We can't get him out. So if you are interested in producing for European Team Fortress TV, do not hesitate to message DumTum on Discord and get set up, because TF3 production needs another helper. I like the dragon. I found it. PowerPoint has this thing. It's like 3D dragon models. They're really cool. So we're gonna. I put that in there. Thank you very much for your time. I think more than anything, I would really like. Do we need casters? Kind of. Do we need producers? Yes. We definitely need producers. I think most of the reason why games don't get covered nowadays with TFTV is not the fact that we don't have casters, the fact that we don't have enough producers. Max Chill, like, pretty much solo produced a couple seasons. We also had Arch Rhythm basically do entire seasons on his own as well in the past. It'd be really nice for some help. So if you feel like producing instead, and you think the cameramen suck, you should be that guy. Message DumTum. Alright. With that out of the way, point number 1. First thing that I wanted to expand upon a little bit is game knowledge. And this wasn't prompted by anything specific. I sort of learned from my mistake the last PowerPoint of specifically calling people out. So I'm not going to do that. We're not going to call anyone out. I'm just going to say that I happened to watch some broadcasts for some people that may not have known enough about the game to where I personally would have been comfortable going on broadcast. And the reason for that is, the reason game knowledge is so important. I'm going to try not to swear this time as well. I got chastised a little bit for my language use last time, so we're going to try to not swear. It might happen anyway. But yeah. The problem is that if you don't know what's happening, how is the audience supposed to know what's going on if you can't even tell them what's happening? You cannot tell the audience what's happening if you don't know what's going on instead. You need to understand the flowchart of the game. You need to know what's going to happen before it happens. You need to be able to point things out going into situations to set up not only yourself to what you want to talk about, but also, more importantly, what your co-caster wants to talk about as well. If you aren't pointing your co-caster in the right direction as well, so there's a coherent storyline between both of you, the cast is absolutely miserable and awful to listen to. Watching, like, it's just like a real conversation. If you're not bringing anything useful to a conversation, it becomes a complete one. It's like reading, like, holy fuck, this is so nutty. It's like reading the weird, like, Socratic dialogues that mostly just revolve around Socrates, just kind of, like, saying things, and then the other guy's like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. It's like, There's no dynamic back and forth between the two casters if one of the casters clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. And so I put this into words here, whereas, like, you need to be able to predict what's about to happen, and this is for the color caster, of course, if you want to analyze the game, you need to know what is happening in the game, which is why I said that you should be at a decent level in game, because that is the most obvious way to most people to acquire said knowledge about the game. Obviously, there are other ways, but also you have to recognize that you are in a community of people who are mostly younger, and also just with video games in general, is in that people will listen to you more if you are better than them at the video game. So if you are a top mid player, you are like statistically better than most of the people in the chat watching the game. But just to bring it back to what I was talking about originally, is that it is so hard to play by play properly if you don't know what you're looking at. Like, you might say that, oh yeah, I don't want to color cast, so my game knowledge isn't as important, but it is still absolutely, it's so important that you know what's about to happen to the game, because you end up just casting from the kill feed, and casting from a kill feed is fine on occasion, but like, it's such a bad thing to rely on because it completely removed, like, you might as well just be an AI, just reading out the kill feed. So if you want any personality, if you want to be able to bring any sort of flavor to the things that you are saying about the game, you need to understand what is going to happen before actually happens, at least to a certain extent, be able to set expectations so that the audience, not only the audience, but you as well know what you can say. You can plan out your sentences so they don't sound as stupid. This is sort of what I mean by flowchart. You can see I'm very bad and didn't set up the flowchart. It's okay. It's fine. I didn't properly animate it. Whatever. If you look at an example of a round, right? The mid-fight starts. And what either... Let's just, like, super simple. What happens is either the red team wipes or the blue team wipes. If we take the red team, the wipes example, what ends up happening now is because they wiped on mid, and we're playing, like, I don't know, like, Snake Water or something, blue team is now trying to push last with add, right? As they're pushing last with add, there are two possibilities. Either they win the round because they're pushing with add, or there's a blue soldier that runs out, or there's a red soldier rather, runs out, drops the blue medic with a crazy air shot, and the red team holds. This provides you, this basic sort of flowchart understanding of the game provides you with the ability to set up expectations and direct the conversation between you and your co-caster. And this also, I think, very naturally, if you think back to the sort of the sine curve and sort of the sort of the picture and the understanding of the ebb and flow between moments, these are all the big highlight moments you can see in the flowchart that I've actually sort of mentioned. But in between that's all the sort of the low points, your time to set it up. You should know what happens, and you should be able to set up reasonable expectations for what could and should happen next based off of what you just saw. And if you're not able to do that, then unfortunately, I'm sorry, my friend, you have to start studying some fucking demos. You have to start watching some demos. You have to start playing the game a little bit more yourself to be able to sort of understand, to be able to tell people what's about to happen. Another part of game knowledge is right there. What I just said was very focused about what's actually happening inside the game. Another part of game knowledge, when we're referring to casting, is also just your ability to prep. And so what I mean specifically is the better prepped you are, the more prepared you are to talk about the things I covered in part 1, stuff like who are the players, like who are the teams, where, who are they? How do they play? If you are able to tell the audience this already, if you know this before you go into the cast, you're able to tell the story of the game so much better. Suddenly, you can take a week 5 matchup between two mid-table teams that might not matter that much, like, on its own, where most of the players might not be that exciting, right? But you should be able to drag something out of it pretty much every single time to make it an entertaining game. Make it interesting, right? And this is where good prep really comes in. This is where I'm now going to completely break continuity, Alt-Tab to a browser, and leak my Google Docs. Because in here, this is my folder I use for casting. You can see, for example, here, this is my Arcadia Fortress TF2 Community LAN folder. In here, there's a folder called Teams. This is every team that was playing in the invite group plus the bus crew that I immediately gave up because I didn't care. And mostly what these are, I'll try to find... is that these are extremely badly formatted. Wait, this is a bad example because it's shocky on it. Let's do witness. This is a little bit better formatted. Basically, what these are is they are pretty much complete Prem team histories of each and every player with teammates and with dates. Because one thing is you have season numbers, but season numbers don't mean anything to most people, so having actual dates is really helpful. And then, like, a little bit of, like, some notes for each player, like, they have anything sort of specific, like the play style, the storyline for the individual player, stuff like this. This is really badly organized. It's good enough for me. I'm a bit of a messy guy, so this works for me. I've shared this with other casters, and they absolutely hated this, the way it looks. But the idea is mostly just to make sure that I can say things, and I don't run out of things to say necessarily, right? But I have a general idea of the stories of everyone in my head before we even get into it. And this helps so much, just setting yourself up for a really good cast if you know who you're talking about, and not just the game that you're talking about. Boom. Point 1. Number 2. This one is great. It's warming up and exercising your voice. Did you know Microsoft PowerPoint also lets you put in 3D models of dinosaurs that are animated? This is crazy. This is apparently like... So this isn't real because we all know that T-Rexes have feathers now, but like, you know, this is apparently under education. It's pretty funny. So most of this is stolen from the casting chamber by Hysterics, who is a play-by-play caster for the Chinese League of Legends League's English broadcast. He has a big YouTube series, which this is a link to it. I'll post the PowerPoint afterwards. This is a link to the YouTube playlist where he has all of that stuff. He talks about everything. It's really, really good if you want to get into casting. Not necessarily League of Legends. I'll talk about it a little bit more in a second, but there is major overlap between League of Legends and TF2 in the way you want to cast it. A lot of it is general skill. Stuff like warming up, exercising your voice applies to basically everything if you're going to work with your voice. Number one thing, tongue twisters. Do some tongue twisters. There's breathing exercises as well that you can also do. He goes into detail. I'll show you some in a second when I'm finished with the slide. Ideally, you want to do this every day. I'm gonna be honest, I don't do it every day because I'm not very disciplined. I said that I'd do this over a month ago, and it took me like a month to make like a 20 slide PowerPoint. So yeah, World of Warcraft is fun, but like, I don't do it every day. I should do it every day because your voice, like everything else, is athletic. It's something you have to keep training. As you can hear, I'm speaking not very good right now, and this is a practice for that. I'm gonna give you a concrete example of what a warm-up session would look like, specifically for what I do personally, in a second. Another thing I want to go into is that drinking tea is really nice. Drinking tea will really help with your throat, as you will find if you cast a fair amount. If you use your voice a lot, eventually your throat will start to hurt. I personally absolutely recommend chamomile and honey tea. This shit goes hard. What you do is you make chamomile tea, but then you add like a heaping tablespoon of honey. Not tablespoon, teaspoon of honey, and it tastes amazing. The chamomile is good for you. The honey is amazing. Even if you can't drink tea, a hack that you can do is just like take a spoonful of honey, and like that will coat your throat and like make casting more durable and make you last longer and better. Also, another thing, apparently this is true. I'm really bad at following this one. It's that cold water is apparently really bad for your voice. So if you are if you're really into this, like super into this, you don't want to drink cold water. You can drink like a little bit, but like room temp water is like way better for you. I'm never gonna follow this advice because I really like cold water. Cold water is delicious. It's like my favorite drink, but like whatever. All right, let's go into my routine. So this is what I will do. Standard, mostly is like a warm up. Sometimes multiple times a day at different lengths. I mostly like to do this before a cast as well. Find a quiet spot, usually without too many people around, because you will look weird. And I'll show you why. Because the first thing I like to do is I like to stretch my tongue. Then afterwards, I do some articulation phrases to make sure that I'm saying things properly. Then I do some tongue twisters, and I do this before every single cast because it just kind of helps me get into the zone, get into the mood of like actually casting. So I'm going to show you now what that looks like by, again, completely breaking your immersion. I'm going to go back here. And in this folder, I'm not going to share this with you because some of this stuff, oh boy, can't leak that shit. This, again, is completely ripped from Hysterics, by the way. So if you, like, he covers this exact piece of paper in his as well, but I really like it, so I keep it going. But I start off with these down here. So I do this first. I like stretch out my tongue, point my tongue. I'm not going to do this right now because you won't be able to hear anything. It sucks. Then you put two fingers. You can between your teeth, and then you go like googa giga 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 goga. And what you really want to do is you want to make sure that you stretch your lips while you do this. You stretch your mouth, and like really try to articulate yourself when you try to do this. I do these first. I sort of work my way from down and then up. Then I do some articulation phrases. A big black bug bit a big black bear and made the big black bear bleed blood. Choose orange shoes, shit like that. I can't do this one, I suck at that one. Frank threw Fred 3 free throws. I'm suck at it, it's not good, but it'll get there eventually. Martin met a mob of marching, munching monkeys. Linger longer, rabid, rabbit, with a which way, curiously obscure procure, shit like that. Then we go into some tongue twisters. Start up here, and then you go to the fast ones, or you do the fast ones first, and you go up here. Depends. I thought a thought, but the thought I thought wasn't the... I thought a thought, but the thought I thought wasn't the thought I thought. You can hear me try to articulate this as well as I'm doing it. I'm really trying to put... I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a second, but I'm trying to put my voice further down, not necessarily speak from my throat, but try and speak from... It's technically called like the fucking diaphragm or something. Like, you just try to go a little bit lower. I'll talk more about this in a second. But then, and I also do these multiple times, and I like to play with the way that I say them as well, my cadence. As well. For example, pick a partner and practice passing, for if you pass proficiently, perhaps you'll play professionally. You can say this like a billion different ways. You do it really fast, you do it really slow, you can articulate different things, you play around with it. I like this one a lot because it kind of really exemplifies it. If Stu choose shoes, should Stu choose the shoes he choose? You can say this like 20 different ways. I'm not going to do it. Trust me, you can do it. Alright. And I'll do that. That can take anywhere from like 5 to 30 minutes, depending on how thorough I'm feeling. Ideally every day, of course. Fuck me, I'm not disciplined enough to do that, but like in theory, right? Alternatively, another tip that you can do, and I actually fully recommend this. I actually did this myself. And it honestly, like, super, like, really, really helped me out with my casting. And it's called join a choir. You might not realize this, but a lot of the skills that you learn in choir are also just skills that you use when you cast. For example, if you want to sing properly, you have to learn how to project your voice, out to a group of people. And this is what you will learn in a choir. You will learn how to project your voice. You will learn how to breathe properly. You'll learn also how to articulate things properly, right? As well. Because, singing is kind of just like articulating things the right way. And like controlling your voice, stuff like that. Learning how to breathe. This is really good stuff. Choir also, coincidentally. I never thought I'd say this. Choir is like one of the coolest things I've done in my life. Choir is so fun. Do it with like a fun group of people. It's amazing. Choir is such a good experience. I would highly recommend it. If not for casting, just in general. It's a really good experience. Big recommend. Alright, so let's talk about energy. How to be energetic, but like not sounding weird. Number one, I've talked about this already. Project your voice. There's a very simple exercise you can do to practice this, which is you breathe in, but try not to move up. Try and only move your stomach in and out, but keep your shoulders level. This is better explained by Hysterics in his casting chamber video. I recommend you go watch that. And then another thing that I think is really crucial. This is, if you live further down south, if you've been around people from, you know, the Mediterranean. Speaking with your hands really helps in a lot of cases. I'm doing it right now and I'm not even realizing it. But it's just, it helps a lot with your ability to kind of project outwards, is by also using your hands to help emote and emulate. Even if you can't be seen using your hands, it still very much helps with the way that you're articulating things. Another tip that I'm going to be honest is way too recent compared to how obvious it is that if you have the ability to do this, stand up when you're casting. Especially for a big game. Maybe if you're sitting down for a sort of a regular week game, a game that's not that important, it's completely fine. But if you have the ability to stand up for a cast, you should try it at least a couple times to try and get in the flow of things. Because what you'll realize is, in the same way that when you're in the choir that you've obviously joined, whenever you actually have to perform, or just in general, right, when musicians perform, usually they stand up when they do it, right? Just because standing up allows you more, it makes breathing from your diaphragm a lot easier, projecting from your diaphragm so much easier, and it makes it a lot better. It also allows you to be a lot more emotive. Above, I've talked about speaking with your hands, but you can speak with your whole body. There are video recordings of me casting Arcadia that exist on a hard drive somewhere that I kind of want to look at, but they're also 2 terabytes. I technically have space for that on my computer, but not really, so may not, but when I'm really into the casting, I'm jumping all over the place, and standing up really helps with that. Getting you in the right headspace as well. It's, if you have the ability to do it, you should. Either if you're wearing a headset, you have a decent mic arm that allows you to move your microphone around a little bit. I highly recommend standing up. It's great, especially if you're play-by-play. Really allows you to have a lot more energy. And then another thing I just think is important is that you should just allow yourself to be excited. I'm gonna be honest, I can get in the zone very easily and stop being self-conscious. This is what the warm-up really does for me more than anything, is to forget about the things around me and just allow me to be in the moment. How you do that yourself is, I have no idea. But allow yourself to let yourself go to the energy of the game, right? Allow yourself to ride the wave of whatever is happening on your screen. Be that if it's boring or be it if it's super exciting, right? Allow yourself to be taken away by the energy. The worst thing that can happen to you, and the thing that has happened to me a couple of times, is when I've been really in the moment, some person comes onto the set, within my peripheral vision, it will break me from my spell of being really into the game, and it will stop me from feeling the excitement that I would feel if I just didn't notice people were around. Another way, obviously, to allow yourself to be excited is to prepare for the match. If you're prepared and you get yourself excited for the game, it's a lot easier to actually be excited for the game if you know the stakes of what's going on. That being said, I have to go on to my next point now, which is, yes, you should be happy and excited, but you should also slow the fuck down. This is something that I think most people run into. I've run into this a lot in my life in general, is that I get really excited and I want to say a lot of things, and I talk really fast. But most of the time, I'm just going to have to tell you right now, speaking really fast and trying to be Eminem rap god is not going to work, and it's going to sound really stupid, and honestly, it's going to sound a bit amateurish. So this brings me on to the next part of the PowerPoint, which I've titled, wait, hold on. I don't know why I put in this animation. Why you should not cast like ODPixel. ODPixel is a to play-by-play, and he does cast that kind of sounds like this.
Back at this smoke. They know that the side of Boulder on the high ground. Miracle's going to jump forward, but straight away the BKB comes out. In front of the air with Deafening Blast, falls himself down to the bottom. Saxa comes in with a burst straight the epicenter. He catches 2, but the Echo Slam is out in response for GH, trapping up the Sand King. Shuriken Nuke gets thrown out by Karuki, but it's not.
This clip is 3 minutes long.
He removes it with the Lotus, uses himself up. The bounty rune if he wants it.
He does this for 3 minutes straight.
Again with the self-use. Want to re-engage. He gets himself out. Those Bloodstone charges in the lot planet. Chase down. Look to get the chakra connection onto G.
I'm gonna be honest. You shouldn't do this. This is kind of like, I don't know if any of you watch Counter-Strike, but I think the general meme for a really long time about Counter-Strike, if you want to get good at AWPing, for example, I think the classic example, you want to get really good with the AWP, you watch Device, and you watch his demos, you try to emulate him, because he plays the way you're supposed to play. Even though the best of the best, like the best AWPer of all time is simple, you should not try to emulate what the GOAT does, because the GOAT is doing GOAT things and is the GOAT for a reason. You almost definitely... Oh my god. Stop. You almost definitely do not have the lungs to do what he's doing. And another thing that you really have to keep in mind is that the more words that you say, the less impact each word will have. And this is sometimes okay, but if you're in a big moment, you're casting a big fight, you're casting a big play, you want to highlight the big play in a way that people will remember it. And by screaming a billion words in 1 second, you won't remember it. You have to think, what is ODPixel's most iconic play of all time? It's where he screams one word. He just screams Seb, which is by far the most iconic cast moment he's ever had. That rap god thing is a meme for a reason. I'm gonna give you a better example of what you kind of a better casted IMO that you should emulate. This is wait, hold on. This is Cajal. He's a League of Legends caster, and this is the end of the 2022 World's Finals, which is by far one of the greatest esports matches of all time. What I want you to pay attention to is this guy over here, Captain Flowers, and the way he's play-by-playing.
I'm pointing at the screen because.
All right, shut the fuck up.
T1's going for the base. They're going for the Nexus. Can they do it in time? Kingan comes back. Elder Drake at the ready. But what can he do? Q3, no damage just yet. Elder Drake, the execute. Saith.
Look at the Kobe.
All right. Notice how he's so much slower than ODPixel there, and he allows more time. Not only does it make his words more impactful, it also allows more time for him to think. Going slower allows you more time to think about what you're going to say next. More time to think means that you have more time to just breathe. You don't run out of breath. You can go for longer. If you have more time to breathe, you can go louder and with more power. More power doesn't necessarily mean louder. And the more power you have, the more impact your words have, the better the result ultimately is going to be. Another thing that you will notice with both of these casters that will come into play in general is that they all cast with rhythm. You can see Captain Flowers literally bumping up and down with his breaths, which sort of creates a rhythm and a metronome that he's following when he's casting. Rhythmic casting just sounds better. And if you can match your play-by-play with a rhythm going a bit slower like that, something I've been able to do a couple times. I think if you go watch Insomnia 69 Upper Bracket Finals, there are really good examples where I did a very good job. IMO. I'm too lazy to find that, gonna be honest, but they are there, and that's kind of honestly what you're really aiming for, is to have that sort of rhythm. And obviously when you're in a rhythm, this allows you to sort of fuck around with the music of the cast a little bit, especially as a play-by-play. Gives you the opportunity to sort of have fun, play with it. This is when for me casting gets really, really fun now, after sort of learning the very basics. When I get to cast a moment, like a big play-by-play moment, I get to run around with rhythm, it starts being a lot more fun. And I really enjoy it. This is what really gets me going nowadays. So, that being said, there are a couple ways to do this. You can see Captain Flowers literally just times his breaths, goes up and down. There are stories of him tapping his foot to the melody, to the rhythm, to a metronome. I use my hand. Personally, my left hand is constantly bumping up and down, kind of like an Italian, like, okay sign thing. I don't know why it does that, but it just does. Shit like that. Just have a way to sort of keep the rhythm in your head. Really elevates your play-by-play to another level, and it makes it sound so much better. So, who should you listen to as good examples of who to copy? I'll preface this by saying that, in my opinion, casting TF2, it's kind of like a really weird mix of League of Legends or Dota 2 and Counter-Strike. In that it's an FPS in Counter-Strike, and some of the fights do play out kind of like Counter-Strike, the way you have sort of similar levels of pauses between games, stuff like that as Counter-Strike, but also the team fights are a lot more MOBA-y than than Counter-Strike is. Counter-Strike fights are very fast. The time to kill in TF2 is a little bit slower, which means that the fights will just take a little bit longer, which means that you get more of an opportunity to play-by-play. Yeah, so IMO, I think... This is my list of people I could come up with in a moment. There are obviously more. I, again, preface this by saying I only watch League of Legends and CS, basically, so I don't know anything. Like, I mentioned ODPixel because I watched the International, but, like, I'm going to be honest, besides that, I have no idea about Dota. I don't know anything about other esports, but, like, the two that I really know about are League and CSGO. So for play-by-play, I would really recommend we just watch him. Captain Flowers, League of Legends, I think at the moment, in my opinion, he's probably the best play-by-play in the world across all video games. Obviously, besides that, ODPixel as well is also really good. There are so many things you can learn from him still. Even though I said you shouldn't emulate all of the things he does, there are a lot of things that he does really, really well. My personal favorite, the guy that I personally prefer listening to the most is Scrawny from Counter-Strike. He does a really good job in projecting how much fun he's having. I'll show this in a second, but there are a lot of videos where you can just see him bouncing around having a really good time. I think he's great. I love him. He's such a good caster. Really emotive, has incredible range. Obviously, you have to talk about Anders as well. You know, Counter-Strike caster kind of go-ish. I don't think he's the best Counter-Strike caster, but he's such good experience. Really good. Benchmark, play-by-play. So much you can learn from him. And then Machine as well. At the top of his game. So sick. Very good. Highly recommend. Over on the color side, I'm sorry Americans, spelled color like this. Educating British schooling system. It's just how it is. Kjo, League of Legends, I think is the best League of Legends color caster overall. He's the highest game knowledge. He knows what he's talking about. He does a really good job. Vedius is, I think, the best caster in the color caster in the world, specifically at picking up from his play-by-play. He is the best at adding supplementary notes to a bigger moment. I think specifically for that, there is no better caster in the world than Vedius. He almost becomes a second play-by-play a lot of the time. He's really sick. Kobe as well. It's kind of like the Anders of League of Legends color casting. He's been around forever. He does a really good job. Color, of course, you cannot talk about color casting without the GOAT, Henry G. Everyone on the color list will tell you that they have copied pretty much everything or tried to emulate everything that Henry G has done. He's so good. You should just watch him. I think Launders is another really good example of a color at the moment. Sponge as well. Also sick. I think in general, if there's one game that you really want to watch to get better at casting, it is specifically the League of Legends International broadcasts. And it is Counter-Strike in general. Because the Counter-Strike casters are the best in the business. Overall, you will learn the most from just copying Counter-Strike casters. Further reading. There are more things you want, if you want to dive a little bit further. I talked about this a bunch of times already. Hysterics is the casting chamber. It's like 8 hours long, super sick. There's a link here. I'll post this PowerPoint later because I haven't uploaded it yet, but like I'll post it in the TFTV thread. This is a link to the playlist, and it is a lot, but it is all so sick. And he does interviews with a lot of play-by-plays, really good stuff, great stuff, love it. I highly recommend checking it out. Next one are these are a bit more fun. These are uploaded to Blush Premier's YouTube channel. These are just caster cams of the casters and their reactions to the game. These are great.
Yes. Oh my god.
Just for like understanding, I think, how to move and specifically how to move as a caster, which is something obviously because most of the time casters aren't on screen. Knowing where to sit, how to move, how to do certain things, you actually learn a ton from watching these caster cams, and they're great. You should watch them. Similar note is the video I showed earlier. It's Kjo showing the reactions to the World's Final. Here's another one in there already as well on his YouTube channel, which you can dig up. But it's about like Kobe throwing a bottle, so it's like not that important. And then this video I actually saw like 10 minutes before I went live. which is Launders. Spends like 13.5 minutes talking about color casting. Interesting stuff. I need to watch it again because I kind of watched it briefly and then I started this. But also very good. There are more. Blast Premiere I saw as well has over an hour of Launders and Scrawny talking about what they do for casting. Haven't watched the video yet. Probably will at some point. Not sure if I'm doing it right now. I'm gonna be honest. I kind of want to play some World of Warcraft, watch some League of Legends. But you know, I'll watch it. I'll watch it sometime. All of this, really good stuff. Highly recommend it. If you're going into casting, you might as well be prepared. And I think this is a good way of doing so. Now, this is the million-dollar questions. How do I actually start casting? And the most immediate response would be to just message the people in charge of the broadcast. Like, if you're in Europe, message DumTum. If you're in America, I have no idea. Probably Dolphin, I think. But Fireside also does some stuff. If you're an American, you'll probably have a better idea of who to talk to over there than I do. If you are in Australia, hitting up Mitch and Capping TV is a great start. Mitch as well, just in general. He's a good guy to talk to. I'll talk a little bit more about why in a second. But, you know, message the people that are in charge of the broadcast. Be like, hey, I want to cast. If you talk to DumTum, he will probably put you on his stream. And you get to do a trial cast with him. Another option is to just do it yourself. OBS is free to download. Very easy to set up. Just try a couple of casts yourself. Run it through. Maybe don't grab a friend because it's hard to duo cast when neither of you have experience. But try to, if you know someone who's willing to cast with you for the first time, do it. It'll probably help you out a little bit. Otherwise, just do it yourself. Throw yourself headfirst into it. Another big tip is to cover lower tiers. Obviously, TFTV prioritizes coverage of Premiership, and if you are not on said TFTV broadcast quite yet, you can cover the lower tiers. It exposes you to some eyes. Obviously, I have not met a lower tier team that hasn't been excited that their game has been covered. We're not going to flame DumTum any more than that. Another really big thing, specifically for me, beyond casting Division 1, stuff like that, is all of the weekend cups that happen, which they do happen from time to time. They're happening more during COVID, but they still happen, right? And these are really good because a lot of the time, most casters won't be willing to do that much of them, and they have other stuff. So if you can be the guy that's like, no, hey, Mitch, usually the guy you talk to, or like DumTum, whoever's like actually doing that cup, setting yourself up, signing yourself up to be there when the time comes for these cups is a really good idea. Another thing on top of that is the odd hours. This is me at 3 a.m. about to cast a DreamHack Cup where G6 show up with 2 mucks and get rolled by Froyotech in 5 minutes while playing a perma rocket jumper soldier. Not the most proudest moment in my casting career, but I was there. You know, I showed up at 3 a.m. And not only does this signal to yourself that you like doing it, but it signals to everyone else that you are there regardless, right? I think I have, because I do these things where I will get up at 5 a.m. to cast Australian games sometimes, or I will get up in the middle of the night to cast some American games once. I'm not sure if I'm going to get up at 3 a.m. again to do that. But if you are willing to do stuff like that, it's a really big signal boost. It helps a lot. It shows the people in charge of the actual broadcast, the people actually have power, that you are willing to go a little bit of an extra mile. Another thing about timing is if there has just been a big LAN, there's just been an RGL, there's just been an ice series, there's just been, I don't know, Copenhagen Games has just happened, chances are that most of the big boy casters that are doing those events do not want to look at TF2 for at least a couple weeks, and this is your prime time to come in and snatch up some games because the big boys like TurboTabs and Epoly are busy sleeping their old men asses off. On top of that, the B streams are great as well because the big boys want to be on the A stream. They'll usually be on the A stream. B streams will happen occasionally, but also just online coverage for stuff like the RGL lands, the Banny lands that happen. They usually have a B stream running. We had it for I-69 as well. I don't think we had it for Arcadia, but usually if there is a land, there's also some additional online coverage going on. These are great because online LAN streams are still LAN streams in the sense that they will prepare you for the very real world that LAN streams are scuffed as fuck, and they will help mentally prepare you. Just in general. But but they're still really fun. They're great stuff. Shows that you're willing to put in extra effort besides just putting your name on the Dum Dum Caster Who's Here list and waiting for him to pick your name. It's kind of, taking your fate by your own hand a little bit more, and it shows a lot of important effort and willingness to be part of the team. If you are feeling scared or nervous, I recognize that most of the people watching this are probably closeted nerds like myself. A lot of the time, you'll probably find yourself a bit nervous and very uncomfortable about the situations that you are putting yourself in. At I-69, I was randomly asked if I could just host a desk, something I'd never done before. And that's terrifying. You haven't done it before, right? The same thing with casting. Putting yourself, even though it's technically a number on your on your screen on twitch.tv, it's also people in chat. It's you're exposing yourself in a different way to a lot of people. It might be really scary, but I think something that I've learned recently many times, which life has taught me a lot of times and keeps telling me, I keep relearning it every single time, is that most of the things that are really worthwhile in your life are going to be scary to begin with. And this isn't just casting. This is everything, pretty much, that is really worthwhile doing, that's really fun and meaningful. Like casting has been for me and for a lot of other people, taking that initial first step and jump is scary and will make you nervous, but it is always so worth it just to be able to push yourself and prove to yourself that you can do it. And having exercise and doing things that make you uncomfortable and doing them anyway is great for anything. Be it TF2, be it, I don't know, moving to another country, going to, picking a university degree and starting your first day there, moving to a new city, literally anything. Having experience beating that fear from your own home is really nice. Now, I have not looked at Twitch chat for the past 42 minutes, but my next slide is there any questions? I'm going to Alt-Tab.